What's going on, guys? It's Danny from Fantasy Stock Exchange here, and today I'll be bringing you the first week of wide receiver rankings over here at the Fantasy Stock Exchange YouTube channel for the 2022 fantasy football season. And football starts tonight, thank the Lord. So I got you covered with my top 24 wide receiver rankings to help you decide whether the juice is worth the squeeze on the pass weapons for today's game and this week's slate overall. We will be live tonight prior to the Bills versus Rams kickoff. Come hang out, come talk ball, might have some drinks, might have some fun. Make sure you stay tuned to that. But either way, if you guys enjoy this video, leave a like down below. Comment who your favorite wide receiver start is this week and subscribe to the channel. We are on the road to 15,000 subscribers. Hopefully we can hit that as soon as possible. I appreciate you guys for the continued support on the channel. But before we get into my wide receiver rankings, let's hit that damn intro as always. Okay, so before I get into wide receivers 1 through 8, I want to give a quick shout out to Establish the Run. Establish the Run creates high quality DFS and prop betting content. The founders, Adam Levitan and Evan Silva, are longtime fantasy experts that myself and Corey have been following for years upon years, and we can personally vouch for them being legit. If you guys play DFS, these guys are the most serious DFS guys around. Having a team of people including Levitan, Silva, and Michael Leone creating weekly projections, ownership projections, and even analyzing things like offensive and defensive line matchups each week to help you in weekly tournaments as well as your season-long leagues. You guys can use promo code FSC for 10% off any package they have to offer. DFS packages, player props packages, and in-season packages, all 10% off with promo code FSC, as well as free content available from them over on the Establish the Run YouTube channel. We appreciate the support from the whole team over at Establish the Run for us over here at FSC. Now let's get into wide receivers 1 through 8. And kicking off the wide receiver rankings for this week, we got Justin Jefferson, wide receiver from the Minnesota Vikings. Vikings have scored over their 22-point implied total for Sunday's game in each of the last 3 games against Green Bay with Kirk Cousins at quarterback. Justin Jefferson in particular, week 10 on last year, 33.49% target share and 11 targets per game down the stretch. I expect a high-scoring divisional game and for Jefferson to go absolutely ballistic. 8 for 169 and 2 in his last meeting against Green Bay with Kirk Cousins at quarterback. He's my wide receiver 1 coming into the season. Nothing changes going into week 1. Going to wide receiver 2, we got Cooper Kupp of the LA Rams, obviously playing tonight against the Buffalo Bills. Thursday Night Football cannot come sooner. Obviously, you are firing up last year's overall wide receiver 1 and the second highest over-under game of the entire slate. I expect points to be scored, passes to be thrown, and Cooper Kupp to do Cooper Kupp things. No real issues if you want to rank Cooper Kupp number 1 on this week. I just do think Jefferson and Kupp are the clear top 2 options going into week 1. My number 3 option this week is going to be Devontae Adams of the Las Vegas Raiders, and I actually prefer his ceiling outlook to that of Chase this week, given the state of this matchup. Third highest over-under on the entire slate at 52. And the only concern that we have for Adams is that we haven't actually seen him in a Raiders uniform just yet. Adams is obviously, again, as we know, superstar level talent. Matchup against LA could be the highest scoring of the entire slate. I'm going to trust the best overall wide receiver in football to be the go-to look for Derek Carr in this game, divisional game. Let's go on to number 4, and that's going to be Jamar Chase of the Cincinnati Bengals going to play the Pittsburgh Steelers. And I love Jamar, but this matchup against Pittsburgh seems almost guaranteed to be an ugly game script. Given the type of player Chase is, however, and the fact that the Bengals offense can pop off at any moment, I think that he has to be ranked at 4. But the volume of the top 3 combined with their matchups makes this a much less appealing spot, in my opinion. And in terms of this game, 44.5 over-under. I actually expect the under here being the first game of Mitch Trubisky as the starting quarterback for the Pittsburgh Steelers, combined with the common nature that we usually see in these tough, physical AFC North matchups. We saw last year 7 total targets in the 2 games he played against the Steelers. Again, it's week 1. Chase is a superstar. I'm not going to be overthinking some Fugazi splits from last season. Fire him up. I think he's got the upside, obviously, on any given week to give you a week-winning type of performance like he did for a lot of you if you won your championship in this game against the Kansas City Chiefs just last season. Let's go on to number 5, though. CeeDee Lamb, wide receiver, Dallas Cowboys. You guys see the jerseys hanging behind me. Sunday Night Football going up against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And what is not to like about this potential CeeDee Lamb matchup? 4th highest projected over-under on the entire slate at 51. No Michael Gallup for week 1 confirmed. And we saw just this past year how the Cowboys opted to attack this Bucs defense, avoiding that stout physical interior that can shut down run games and instead shifting to a high octane aerial attack past year. 58 passing attempts to 18 rushing attempts week 1 of the 2021 season. I expect some more balance, obviously, in the game plan. I don't think they're going to throw it 58 times again, but there's a realistic chance that the Cowboys throw the ball 40 plus times in this game on an offense whose current mainstays in the receiving corps from last year start and end with CeeDee Lamb and Dalton Schultz in week 1. And we saw, obviously, week 1 last year, Thursday night opener, week 1, 15 targets, 7 for 104, and a touchdown in that Thursday night game at Tampa Bay. And I think that not only he has the upside to equal what he did last year, but potentially surpass it given the presence of Amari Cooper not being in town. Number 6 on my rankings this week is going to be Stefon Diggs, wide receiver from the Buffalo Bills, and shifting to another receiver from Thursday Night Football's opener. And trust me, there's going to be a ton more on the way. We're going to the Bills Alpha. Everything that I echoed for Cooper Kupp from a matchup standpoint, high octane, high passing standpoint, it applies to Diggs and Spades as well. The only concern I do have for Stefon Diggs and why he's at 6 rather than, 4 or 5 is that we could see a lot of coverage from Jalen Ramsey in this game. PFF expects Diggs to see Jalen Ramsey in coverage on about half his snaps, which could potentially open the door for Gabe Davis in this game. Overall, I'm not worried about Stefon Diggs. He's a good enough receiver, even if he's facing Jalen Ramsey, to flat out beat him. And I'm trusting a 30% target share receiver for Josh Allen in a game where the Bills might throw it 40 plus times. Fire him up. I think it's a service to rank him anywhere lower than 6 because he is still one of the premier receivers in the entire league. Number 7 on my rankings this week is going to be Keenan Allen, wide receiver of the LA Chargers. And I know I'll probably be the highest on Keenan Allen this week overall, but what's there not to like? The Chargers and Raiders are going to sling the ball over the yard, and I'm trusting the wide receiver that commanded a near 26% target share from Justin Herbert week 7 on in 2021, and he's going up against a volatile Raiders secondary, and again, what I expect to be an extremely high scoring with the Chargers versus Raiders. Fire up Keenan Allen, fire up Devontae Adams, also fire up this next guy, my number 8 overall wide receiver is going to be Marquise Brown of the Arizona Cardinals. This might be another shock to a lot of people, but the only question mark here that you can possibly have with Marquise Brown is the lack of continuity he has with this offense. Hopkins, obviously, we know to start the year suspended for the first 6 games, and the Chiefs Cardinals is currently the highest projected over-under on the entire slate. I trust that both teams are going to be slinging the rock all over the yard, scoring points at will, and I'm trusting the receiver that was able to command a near 26% target share in games Lamar Jackson played last year, despite sharing the field with Mark Andrews, to absolutely obliterate this Chiefs defense in his first game as a Cardinal. I've echoed it all offseason, but there's a realistic chance that come week 5, come week 6, we're looking at Marquise Brown as a potential top-tier wide receiver in fantasy football. Getting off the top 8, guys, let's go into 9 through 16. And we're starting off with Michael Pittman Jr., wide receiver from the Indianapolis Colts. The one thing I'm worried about here is a potential game script, obviously going up against the Houston Texans. If the Colts get up early, if the Colts get up often, we could see it being a huge Jonathan Taylor type of game script. While this is a factor, obviously the pros are undeniable. The Texans secondary, outside of the potential of Derek Stingley, is flat out hot buns. And Pittman, in his first game with Matt Ryan, has a real opportunity to command 10 targets against this secondary. I have a feeling this could, again, get ugly fast. It could be a Jonathan Taylor 20, 25, 30 carry type of game. But I think Pittman should be able to get his points quickly until the Colts eventually run their horse through the backfield. Number 10 is going to be Mike Evans, wide receiver from the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. While I'm worried about a potential matchup against Trevon Diggs, who, despite what the naysayers think, is good and actually did a number on Evans just last year, the expected pace and overall output of this game is far too exciting to rank him outside of the top 10. The other unknown, of course, here is the status of Chris Godwin. By the time I'm recording this, I'm not exactly sure if he's going to suit up for this game, if he's going to sit out this game. You guys are going to know that by your lineup decision on Sunday. But overall, I'm just not going to overthink it. The Bucs are going to score points, and even if Godwin does suit up, losing the presences of guys like Antonio Brown and Rob Gronkowski, specifically in the red zone from last year, I think more than make up for the less than ideal matchup against Trevon Diggs when it comes to Mike Evans. Number 11 is going to be A.J. Brown, wide receiver from the Philadelphia Eagles. I love the player, but I'm really curious as to how the volume of the Eagles pass game will be sliced up in his first game in Philadelphia. What I expect to be a positive game script for the Eagles, I'm worried about how often the Eagles will realistically need to throw the ball in this game against Detroit. Not much else I can say on Brown. Obviously, he has the talent to clearly explode in this matchup, but he can't control his team's overall passing volume. If Jalen Hurts is only throwing the ball 25 times in this game, it's going to be tough for A.J. Brown, despite the freak of player he is, to be able to pay off top 5 level upside. Number 12 is going to be Tyreek Hill, wide receiver from the Miami Dolphins, another wide receiver who switched teams this offseason. Hill makes his Dolphins debut against the New England Patriots. I'm concerned that the Patriots try to slow this game down and maybe make it a slugfest, but this game actually has the 6th highest over-under on the entire slate. The positive of the situation, obviously, is that if the game does play out the way Vegas projected to, the Patriots secondary is by far the weakest it's been in years. His expected matchups throughout the game being Jalen Mills, Miles Bryant, and Jonathan Jones, a far cry from the Pats secondary that was dominated in years past. And not to mention, Tyreek Hill is one of the freakiest wide receivers we have ever seen touch turf. Number 13, Deebo Samuel, wide receiver, San Francisco 49ers. Obviously, given his talent, he should be higher on this list, but the situational factors going into week one are all working against them. We don't necessarily know how the volume split for this 49ers passing offense is going to look in week one with Trey Lance, combined with the fact that they're on the road against the Chicago Bears, a game I expect to be a slow-paced, slugfest, defense, run the ball type of game, and ultimately for the 49ers to get the upper leg early in this matchup. It has the single lowest over-under of the entire slate. Similar to the Eagles case, how much volume can we realistically expect there to go around for San Francisco this week? I can't rank Deebo Samuel lower, obviously, given his efficiency and yards after catch ability that he represents, but I am worried that Deebo Samuel could be in store for a potential dud week this upcoming week against the Chicago Bears. Number 14, T. Higgins, wide receiver, Cincinnati Bengals, going up against the Pittsburgh Steelers. Obviously, I kind of talked about my thoughts on the Bengals versus Steelers matchup when I was talking about Jamar Chase's case. However, with Jamar Chase, obviously, you get the factor of, the 65-yard slant to the house, 2-3 touchdowns in a game. As much as I love T. Higgins, he's more of a volume play. He's more of a guy that you can expect to get 8 to 10 targets. I don't think he has that breakaway ability on any given play that Jamar Chase does, which obviously shows up in the discrepancy of rankings. Jamar Chase at 4 versus T. Higgins at 14. Obviously, he's still a phenomenal player, but I don't think this game really shows a lot in terms of potential volume for the Bengals passing offense. Number 15, DJ Moore, wide receiver, Carolina Panthers. Baker Mayfield revenge game script aside, I'm not a fan of the expected pace of play we could see in this game. I expect the Panthers to win and for the Browns to stay slow, grounded in game one with Jacoby Brissett at the helm. However, again, it's tough to not rank a near 30% target share receiver anywhere lower than 15. Now we hope Baker Mayfield potentially has a Ryan Tannehill-esque redemption arc and makes DJ Moore his potential version of A.J. Brown, as we saw with Tannehill and Brown over there in Tennessee. Number 16, Deontay Johnson, wide receiver for the Pittsburgh Steelers. Exact case that I basically have for Moore, apply it to Deontay. Only the difference is I have much more faith that Baker Mayfield can support DJ Moore production than I do with Mitch Trubisky supporting Deontay Johnson production in Pittsburgh. Not really much else to say on Deontay. We know he's an absolute target hog and maybe has a lower game ceiling, but he has a super, super high floor given the target share, given the overall target output we can expect for him as long as he's in the lineup as a Pittsburgh Steeler. Final part of the video, we're going to be talking about wide receivers 17 through 24 in my rankings this week, kicking it off with Keenan Allen's teammate Mike Williams, wide receiver for the LA Chargers, again going up against the Las Vegas Raiders. I have him lower in my overall seasonal rankings, but Williams is just in such a smash spot against the Raiders that I view him as a top 20 option this week. Again, I would still rather Keenan Allen, but in a game that could potentially result in 30-plus Chargers points being scored, I'm more than comfortable starting Herbert's potential big play threat as a wide receiver 2 this week with huge upside. We saw Mike Williams, when he hits his ceiling games, he can be flat out the wide receiver 1 overall on any given week. I think that this matchup against the Raiders could potentially offer him an opportunity to do so. Number 18, Jerry Jeudy, wide receiver, Denver Broncos. Broncos country, let's ride. I talked about why I believe Jerry Jeudy to be over Courtland Sutton in my rankings all offseason, so I'm going to stick by it week 1. Have Jerry Jeudy at 18. Courtland Sutton barely missed out on this list for me, and week 1 will kind of give us a glimpse into how exactly Russ prefers these targets. Obviously, it's a Russ revenge game. It's a poor Seattle defense, and I do think that maybe Denver can unlock and showcase their prized possession of the offseason with Russell Wilson. If that's the case, Jerry Jeudy, absolute target monster comparative to Courtland Sutton this past year. I think he's got an opportunity at potentially being maybe this year's breakout wide receiver that we take in the mid-rounds of every single year. Love Jerry Jeudy, top 20 receiver for me. It's a little bit of a projection, obviously, over Courtland Sutton, but that's how I've had it all offseason. That's how I'll continue to have it going into week 1. Number 19, Terry McLaurin, wide receiver of the Washington Commanders, going up against the Jacksonville Jaguars. And very similar case to DJ Moore, very similar case to Deontay Johnson. He is a volume hog with a new quarterback, very similar to those guys, like I said. We know that Terry McLaurin is an elite talent. And now we see how Wentz supports him against the team that knocked him and the Colts out of the 2021 playoffs. Obviously, we know last year, week 17, Carson Wentz down the line. Colts are about to make the playoffs, ends up losing that game against the Jacksonville Jaguars. This is obviously potential revenge for Carson Wentz on his new team with the Washington Commanders, and the number one target by far there is going to be Terry McLaurin, especially in week 1 when Jahan Dotson is not fully developed just yet. Number 20, Allen Robinson, wide receiver of the LA Rams. If you couldn't tell, I just want access to high-scoring games with elite quarterback play, which, as you guys know, the Bills and Rams clearly represents. A-Rob has the potential to play a Robert Woods plus role for the Rams, and we saw last year when Robert Woods was healthy, about 15.5 PPR points per game when he was on the field, which would have equated to the wide receiver 17 on the season. So if you guys are looking at this and thinking, well, if you have Cooper Kupp at 2, how is Allen Robinson also in the top 20? We've seen multiple times year over year that if you have an elite offense, it's possible to support 2 top 20 level plays at the minimum. Not to mention Allen Robinson is all right. I think is set for a huge bounce back year. Operating as that number 2 for LA. I think it starts off week 1. I think he goes ballistic against the Bills. Number 21, Amon St. Brown, wide receiver, Detroit Lions. Moving off the Rams versus Bills game, we got Motown's version of Cooper Kupp, and he's in store, in my opinion, for a phenomenal situational game script for week 1. We know last year the story about Amon St. Brown. He had an elite finish to last year. And again, as I mentioned, in terms of positive volume game script, it's all I could have asked for. I told you before with A.J. Brown, I expect the Eagles to go up early and often in this game, which obviously means with Amon St. Brown, he's going to be in more of a passing game script. And we saw last year, he could be a target hog, alpha level upside receiver, 25 PPR points per game down the stretch, and 10 plus targets in each of his last 6 games of 2021. I expect the second-year wide receiver to be able to build off just what he did last year. 22, speaking of second-year wide receivers, Jalen Waddle, wide receiver of the Miami Dolphins, and basically just echo the case I made for Tyreek Hill, only we get more continuity in the offense with Jalen Waddle in comparison to Tyreek Hill. Obviously, for me, I'm trusting Tyreek Hill as a talent, and that's the reason why I rank him number 1 in terms of the pecking order of Dolphins wide receivers. But there's still a realistic chance that Waddle leads them in production week 1. I think both are great talents, and point blank, just putting trust on your studs in week 1. You drafted these guys for a reason. You draft them high. See what ends up developing later in the season. But in week 1, I just advise starting the guys that you selected high in your drafts because there's a reason why you did so. Number 23, Michael Thomas, wide receiver of the New Orleans Saints. And MT is the weirdest rank of the entire wide receiver position. He commands targets like anyone in the game, but we haven't seen him play consistently in each of the last 2 years. I'm leaning on obviously a cautious side here because if he's at full health, if he's fully ready to go, he could be an absolute mainstay in the top 10 of these rankings week over week. Love Michael Thomas, a little bit cautious, which is why I'm ranking him at 23 rather than the top 10 placing that he may deserve by this time week 4. Final name of the video, and I have to end this list with Mr. 204 touchdown himself, Gabe Davis, wide receiver of the Buffalo Bills, obviously playing tonight against the Los Angeles Rams. We'll see, again, if all the hype was warranted this offseason based solely off of what he does in week 1, right? Because that's how the world works. All jokes aside, I think he's in a great spot with exposure to a potential shootout, and I'm happy to start him as a fringe wide receiver 2 this week with potential wide receiver 1 type of upside given the matchup. So love Gabe Davis. If Stephon Diggs is seeing a lot of Jalen Ramsey in this matchup, expect Gabe Davis to go absolutely ballistic alongside him. Appreciate you guys for making it to the end of this video. And again, full rankings will be made available in one of 2 ways. You guys can use code FSC on Underdog Fantasy for 100% match back on your first deposit. And if you do so, you'll get a full year access to mine and Corey's rankings. The other way to get our rankings, of course, is subscribe to the Patreon, Ladster, or Tone Setter tier. Appreciate you guys. Football is back, baby. Let's go enjoy kickoff. Peace out. Enjoy your week. Hopefully your favorite team wins unless you are a Tampa Bay Buccaneers fan like Corey is.